right, I think we could go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome everyone to Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. My name is Nina Joshi, and with us today we have Jessica Karr, the co-founding general partner at Coyote Ventures. Before we jump in, just wanted to give a very quick background on myself. I work as a consultant and design researcher at Kaiser Permanente's innovation shop, where I design and deploy digital health solutions. Before we jump into our conversation, just wanted to share a couple of quick announcements. The first is that we are looking for participants for a postpartum study. All of that information will be down in the chat. The next is that we also have an upcoming event, the Women's Health Tech Challenge in December, and registration is free. So if you are interested, all of that information will also be right down in the chat. And now would love to officially welcome our guest, Jessica. Hi, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you, excited to be here.
Well, maybe, just to kind of kick things off, if you could tell our audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, that would be great.
Yes, awesome. So I founded Coyote Ventures earlier this year with Brittany Barretto. A lot of you may know her as a women's health expert as well. And before that, so I've been out here in San Francisco working with startups for the last about 10 years. I was a biochemist with a master's. Straight out of my master's, I was very lucky that I got connected with Impossible Foods when it was less than a year old. So I came out here and had no idea what I was doing. I was like, what's a startup? What's disruptive technology? What's a seed stage? Didn't know any of that. I'm originally from West Texas, where I thought the only successful careers were doctors and lawyers, which is, great, but there's way more options. And so I was working at Impossible for 4 years, up when it was basically an idea, up through when it launched to the public. It did take about 5 years total from research and development to launch. And then once it launched, it was in the growth stage. And I realized I really love early stage companies where it's like an idea, it's really exciting, it's really scrappy. So I decided to go to business school and sort of figure out like what other type of team I would want to join after my program. And I was consulting with Impossible while I was in school. And then I just started consulting sort of with the mind of joining one of these teams, but I was kind of just jumping from one project to another for about 2 years. Not a very stable lifestyle, but I learned a lot.
That's what's important.
Yeah, I got to go to Singapore, and there's a lot of innovation around here. And there was a lot of food tech companies I was working for, but I also wanted to definitely broaden my scope and say like, what else is, science driven, that has a positive impact, and I really love consumer. So I started to see women's health here and there, and I didn't know it was a whole area at the time, but I would see sort of one-offs of like someone at IndieBio or Plug and Play be like, oh, that's interesting. I haven't seen anything like that. And it's really innovative. So, I started to see more and more, and then I started working in venture at a small pilot impact fund. And I think a lot of us that come to women's health have had some personal reasons why. So I won't go into that because it's not as professional, but it was in sexual wellness. And I joined this venture capital fund, and the general partner did a lot of angel investing in sexual wellness. And so it kind of converged my professional interest with what had just happened to me. And I was obsessed. I was like, all of these companies are so innovative. And also they're exactly the way that I would want to be working, where it's really collaborative, really inclusive, more women. And so I was working on some deals in women's health at the other fund, but it didn't make sense for that to be a big focus of the fund. And so I knew that eventually I wanted to start my own fund. And I think we'll go into that a little bit more later. And so I had connected with Brittany, being obsessed with women's health. You don't go too far before coming across her. So I started collaborating, and we just decided to do it. We started Coyote in March, and we've been going strong. We've made 3 investments so far, and still working on growing.
That's incredible. Yeah, kind of a great segue. I would love to hear like the origin story of Coyote Ventures. Like how did that fund kind of come to be between the two of you?
Yeah, so she has the femtech focused podcast. And so when I started doing my research and learning as much as I could, I was listening and she kept saying, I'm starting a fund, I'm starting a fund. And finally, I was like, yeah, I'm starting a fund too. And I built a pitch deck and I sent it to her and she sent me one back and they were almost the same, except the two slides needed to, we were like, oh, it's a sign. And she said, oh, I had just got off the phone with my lawyer. And Brittany had said like, oh, I just need a partner because Brittany's still doing femtech focus. And, a lot of ventures, it makes sense to have a co-founder. So she kept hearing that. She kept hearing like, I need a co-founder. And so we're like, oh, it's a sign. And there's now a lot of great support for starting funds. It used to be very closed. You need to have $100,000 to start it, and you need to have all these connections that can write $1 million checks. And we don't have as long of careers as some of these older white men who kind of give the advice of like, oh, you need to just call up your buddies who can write you $250K or $1 million checks. And we're like, we don't have that, but we got into a program that's like an accelerator for funds basically, and it was really helpful since it's our first time starting a fund, going through it was like a semester of starting your own fund.
Wow, I didn't even know that there was like whenever you think of an accelerator, you think of it in the context of a company, but that's interesting that they have one kind of for funds themselves.
There's actually a few now, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So if anyone's interested in the audience of starting a fund, know that there's definitely support. For you, you kind of started your, what you were saying with your career, kind of really focusing on early stage startups and the idea and a lot of the research. What was kind of the pivot for you that made you really interested in kind of spending more time in a venture role rather than more of like that entrepreneurial early stage team role?
I realized after consulting for a while that I love having a portfolio of companies. I think some of us are just crazy the way we think, and like some people love to go deep and get, that's like kind of a scientist, like they can go. So, and I was like, I was never a scientist in that way. I never really cared about like the really specific things of an experiment. I cared about like, how is everything connected? And like working on a lot of things. And I just realized like consulting, I did that as well. Like sometimes I'd have 3 companies I was working with. And I realized that also like having that experience made me a good investor because I could understand the science and product more than some of the other investors I met who just, didn't have that same experience. And I think there's good ways for us to overlap, and like, maybe they're much better at building a growth equity financial model. But that's why I love the early stages. That's not exactly what's needed. It's all about product market fit, team. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems like you, like all of that experience that you have has just led you to become like that much more of a better investor when it comes to specific products.
Yeah, and I always want to help the companies too. Like yesterday we had our group meeting, like, okay, let's spend like 10 minutes giving app feedback for this investment we want to make. So
that's incredible.
I love talking about products. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with, Coyote Ventures being, particularly a women's focused venture, what is some of the impact that you both are hoping to see when it comes to this fund and the investments that you're making?
Definitely. So I think we can do a better job at communicating this, but historically a lot of femtech, I think that the way to get it like in the door was to work on, and nothing wrong with fertility, but there's so much funding in fertility, and our theory is sort of that like men can understand it because it affects them equally. But we want to make a statement of like, there's so many other areas of women's lives that need improvement, that they're literally in pain from endometriosis or postpartum, all these things that we say like they're totally ignored. And yes, it's like having, children if you want to is really important. But we're looking at like so many other areas of women's health that are not innovated in. There's like barely anyone innovating in like women's heart health, which is one of the biggest killers of women because we don't even understand that we experience like heart failure different. So
Yeah.
we definitely want to have an impact in all these areas that are just sort of overlooked for the time being. And we know that as women, we are able to really understand the problems and make the founders like comfortable telling us like, because we're so early stage, we need to talk about the problem. And so historically, a lot of investors might have got uncomfortable in the specifics, talking about women's bodies and the problems and maybe wanting to even ignore them. So we definitely want to get in, have the really difficult conversations and not only make a impact on like what we're helping create, but also like the conversations that we're helping like become less taboo. So like, no one, I guess in the average world, people are not wanting to talk about menstruation, menopause, sexual wellness. In our world, we love talking about it. It's our favorite thing.
Love it.
But if it becomes more mainstream, then that's also like moving the needle.
Yeah, I think that is such a beautiful and such a powerful statement to really, focus specifically on, teams that really are trying to solve problems for women and not trying to, fit or change the narrative to appease, a very predominantly male-driven venture cycle. So I think that is incredible. You touched on this a little bit, but I'm just very curious because, you are able to see things from such a wide view, but what are some of the other trends that you're seeing kind of within the health tech space, specifically focused on women's health? What are either some areas of interest for you or just some of the trends that you're kind of keeping your eye on?
For me personally, I'm a little bit opportunistic of like, okay, what are the biggest problems and like who's solving them? I think we could be a little more targeted as we grow, but looking at like, okay, 1 in 4 women have an abortion and there's only maybe one startup that's actually killing it, from what I can tell. And so we're a little opportunistic on like, what's a big market opportunity that will also have obviously huge impact, where there's little innovation. But I would say there's also a lot of trends that aren't really in that, that I don't want to like, so there's a lot going on in general. Like every area we've seen something. I definitely think if we're talking about trends, I think COVID accelerated a lot of things about like accessibility to, telemedicine and things like that. So I've seen a lot of that. Don't personally understand it all because I'm not a doctor, but we'll probably like do 1 or 2 deals in that area.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that it is really interesting. I feel like it's such a huge space. So I can definitely see how there's probably just so much going on, even with each like, specific sector.
Yeah, there's really specific ones, like mental health. And really, I think it makes sense to start that way for telemedicine. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I don't think that's an area of my expertise, but it's really important. Like making sure more accessible in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now I want to ask you for advice because you have such a robust career. So for women that are looking to break into the VC world, kind of get into the venture capital track and be able to invest, what advice would you have for them that are starting out?
Yeah, there's a ton of ways that you can do that. I would say first, if you are not accredited investor, you can start off with equity crowdfunding. So I'm also a venture partner at Republic. I think their deals are really well vetted and really good. So they're more like venture backable deals, and they have a lot of information on the page. So when you're looking, they have a lot of like women's health as well. So it's really awesome. One of the leaders on the inside is really obsessed with femtech. So they're a really great company. I know there's other equity crowdfunding sites. So if something else resonates more, you can check out different ones. You only need a minimum of $100 to invest. And you can even just go for free online and look. So you could even say like, I'm going to look at some companies. I don't have any money, but like, I'm going to figure out what I would maybe make some fake money, like in a Google sheet or something, and just track it. If you are accredited, there's other ways to invest more. So you can angel invest if you know some companies, very risky. You have to invest in a lot of companies to really earn a return. And then you can join like an angel list syndicate if you don't have all that deal flow. And just over time, you can sort of figure out what your investment thesis is. And, you know, if you're a good investor and make returns, and a lot of times it's luck. And yeah, I guess if you are interested also in like really investing a lot, you know, you can invest in a fund. So that's an option as well.
Incredible. Awesome. Yeah, that's a lot of really good tangible feedback, which is great.
Yeah.
And then for now kind of, you know, pivoting to the other side for maybe folks listening that are entrepreneurs, what are, you know, especially since you've been on both sides of it, what are some of the important tips or lessons learned, you know, from your experiences that entrepreneurs should know as they start raising capital, or if they are starting to raise capital?
Yeah, a lot of it's about developing relationships. And so, you know, it takes a little while to really learn how venture works. I think one thing a lot of entrepreneurs are sort of like, okay, I need money, but they don't, sorry, the light is kind of coming in on my head.
No worries.
It kind of skylight.
It's a little bit of sun.
Yeah, I mean, who you raise from does matter. So I would try to learn more about how VC works. Because there have been instances of choosing like not the right investor, whether they're annoying or they, you know, we have to raise our own money. And sometimes someone will not have like an investor might try to lead and then they'll do a capital call and that person doesn't send their money. So it does matter. I think you should start developing relationships and build a network of mentors and advisors and make sure one of them really understands how to raise money. Because I've been on a call with an entrepreneur and I'm like, I like what they're doing in the team, but then they ask me for advice and I'm like, I don't know anything about you, your company. Like, I'm not in a place to give everyone advice that is pitching me. Like, unfortunately, I have my own like limited partners to answer to. So I can give a little bit, but I hate giving advice when I don't actually know all the information. So I would say like that's a top thing is to build up that, you know, network of people who know. And like, yeah, Zoom or COVID has really helped like develop relationships over Zoom, LinkedIn, like even if you, it's better if you've known them a while, but we're again, not all that privileged. So, you know, you can find people online and I think that Zoom, you can still like really connect with people. And Brittany and I, honestly, we started working together over Zoom. And when we started actually forming the fund, I went out to Raleigh where she lives and spent a lot of in real life time, but you can really like do a lot remotely now. So
yeah, absolutely. So I think that makes a lot of sense about just really making sure you're forging those types of relationships and kind of having mentors to help when it comes to not only just knowing what funds to invest in, but also just helping when it comes to strategy too. That makes a lot of sense. Awesome. And then from, you know, your perspective, what are some of the things that you as an investor look for in a company when deciding whether or not to invest?
Every investor will first say team, which is very true, even though it's like always like what you expect them to say. But yeah, like sometimes I'll look, your deck doesn't tell me a lot. Like I honestly, like it's important to have a good deck and then we spend about 5 minutes looking at it. I know it's really unfortunate, but that's how it is. And then I'll get on a call and sometimes I'll be like, I was really excited by the deck, but then the energy was really low, or like sometimes they'll like get on and complain about something. I was like, you should be like really professional. It's good to like connect, but then not complain about, you know, or something like that. So first is connection, but then also like seeing their experience. So obviously if they founded something before, they know sort of the ropes. Definitely love like experienced founders. I'm not like one of those to look at like Mark Zuckerberg and like the like pattern match of like, okay, I want guys who dropped out of college. Like a lot of running a company requires a lot of maturity. So especially in women's health. So team, but then also like looking at the market size. So saying like sometimes there's a need for a company to address something small, but that's not as venture backable. So definitely something that is you know, they have a target market defined and then it could grow. And And, I look at financial projections, like, again, it needs to like grow a lot to return capital to the investors, because it is really risky in the first place. So kind of expect it to be like, again, another cliche, but the rocket fuel, like just like it helps to take off. So those are just a few things. We have a whole deal memo. We do look at impact, which is usually pretty obvious. And yeah, product, like if there's a physical product, I order it and test it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Yeah, and science, we read papers and look at patents since we're able to do that because we're scientists. So
Yep.
yeah,
That definitely helps. That's incredible. Nice. Very good. I think a lot of it is, I mean, definitely cliches for a reason. But I think just kind of getting a good baseline understanding of what are some of the things that people look for, I think is really helpful. And then for you, since it seems like your fund is pretty early stage, what type of like involvement do you have with the companies that you invest in?
So one example is one company needed to assemble some scientific literature for getting into a specific retail store. And so we actually like looked at what they assembled and did a literature search and added to the document. So we can get like pretty scientific. Another one we helped introduce to other investors that came in on the round. And then another one is doing so well that they haven't needed really anything. We've made a few like kind of media related introductions. And since Brittany has a podcast, we also like feature everyone on the podcast, and we can do some advertising at no cost and everything on there. So yeah.
Awesome. Wow. So you kind of do it all from the scientific to the media and the marketing. So I think that's pretty incredible.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really fun. Everybody has different needs. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for you, based off of what you've been seeing, just in general, when it comes to women's health tech and femtech, like what are some of the particular areas that you yourself are really passionate about, whether that's a specific condition or topic, or just like a specific service, whether that's at-home testing or telehealth, etc.
I honestly think it's also needed. But as I said, I came in through sort of sexual wellness. And so I really love that area of saying like, okay, empowering women in that way to me is directly addressing gender equality. But all of women's health honestly really is, but we're not going to be like heavily leading on sexual wellness in terms of our investments, but I think I get the most excited about that one.
That's amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's like a really big area and a really big like disparity too. So I think it's really great that you're starting to see more companies really like address it, but in a way that's just so powerful and very like unapologetic, which I think is so important.
Yeah, definitely.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
Are you guys pre-seed, seed?
We say that we're seed, so mostly we will be seed, but like honestly, it's kind of about round sizes and how much the valuations are. So we're open to pre-seed, but not meaning that it's an idea stage. We want to see like a product and a good team behind it, and then it would like launch pretty quickly. And so we've done pre-seed, seed, and then series A, which is a little late stage for us, but some of the companies are just too great to pass up. So
yeah,
that's kind of our range.
Nice. That's a good one. That makes sense. I know we're kind of close to time, but really just wanted to ask, final thoughts for you. What just general advice have you been given that has been really impactful for you that you can then share with all of the innovators and entrepreneurs on the call today?
I think just following your passion, and I think one thing important to me that I see a lot of is figuring out how to tune into your intuition and feminine values. And I feel like when you can sort of do that, whether you're meditating or doing something else that you love and can sort of like clear your mind, I think you can realize a lot of how to solve problems and figure out what exactly you want to be working on and what you should be doing. So that's something that's always guided me. And sometimes I'm like, how did I get here? But I think that's really what I did for real. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I definitely think that like mindfulness is something that is, I think, so like undervalued. Like you don't people, it's really hard to like, because it just sounds like such like a vague concept that it sounds so hard to like understand the results. But I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, it is.
I love that. Nice. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much for just an amazing conversation. I feel like whether you're an entrepreneur or an investor or even looking to kind of start both of those pathways, I mean, I learned a bunch. So really, really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today about Coyote Ventures.
Thank you. It was great to be here. I'm glad that I got to join among all these other amazing people that you've had before, and great to meet you as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. And so for our upcoming events, we have next week our episode with Nora Dennis. So please be sure to check that out. We also wanted to let you all know that the Innovator Summit for this year, from the end of November to early December, is also available. So please register if you're interested. All that information is going to be in the chat. And then also wanted to highlight for those that maybe joined a little bit later in our discussion that we are looking for participants, postpartum participants for one of our research studies. All of the information is in the chat, as well as registration information for our Health Tech Challenge, which happens in December. Wanted to let you all know that if I talked way too fast for you to get all of this information, please be sure to check out our social media channels for all of the updates on events, research studies, all of that fun stuff. And then also wanted to say a huge thank you again to Jessica for an amazing conversation. Really, really enjoyed just learning about you, your experiences, and what you're doing to improve women's health. Thank you so much. And also thank you to our sponsors, Goodwin and Witham, for sponsoring this amazing conversation. Thank you all. Hope you have an amazing rest of the day. Thank you so much.